Hi, this is Joe from Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and you're listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. In the last chapter, the party must contend with 4 animated suits of armor that come to life when they enter a room that has been designed to catch intruders. Despite the double level up that happened before the fight, things go south quickly. While the party members do score some hits, the animated armor lands blows frequently and hard, often scoring maximum or near maximum damage with their polearms to devastating effect. When it becomes clear to her that they are not going to win, Achillea throws down her weapon and calls for her allies to surrender. They do, and mercifully, the animated suits of armor immediately stop attacking. It's clear that they're programmed, so to speak, not to attack unarmed intruders, but instead to take them captive. And that is exactly what happens. The episode ends with the PCs being marched into a cell at halberd point. Once inside, they are forced to manacle themselves before the door slams shut. Chapter 43, Part 1. Day 36. Evening. Mythic event meaning 60 and 87. Abuse magic. Party status. Achillea, 7 out of 15 hit points. Cord, 2 of 24. Dureni, 10 of 19. Tentir, 19 of 19. Fairwind, 18 of 33. Flicker, 16 of 16. Supplies. The companions have no food remaining. Spells available. Achillea can cast Message and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle, Slow Poison, and Hold Animal. Fairwind can cast Protection from Evil. There was little talk among the companions as minutes turned into hours. There wasn't much to say. It was clear to everyone why Achillea had called for their surrender, and her unanimous decision on the party's behalf, this time, did not create any animosity. One look at Cord explained all. The wooden construct had had chunks hacked off him. There were deep clefts in his torso, even his head. A spiked halberd tip had gouged his cheek, and beside his permanently mild smile, it made for a countenance that was perverse and distressing to look upon, as though he were quite happy to have been mutilated. Achillea, Dureni, and Fairwind were not as badly off, but all 3 still had taken serious wounds. They tended to themselves as best they could while manacled, using the needle and thread Dureni had taken from Duroth to stitch up the worst of their cuts, gritting their teeth through the pain of the operations. Tentir and Flicker had been miraculously untouched after the battle. They stayed silent out of respect for the others, who did not look like they wanted to talk. In the end, the silence was broken, but it was not by any one of them. The magic mouth suddenly grew in the middle of their cell door and addressed them.
Intruders, you are now the lawful prisoners of the great and powerful wizard Xygog, within whose home you trespass. Consider your folly as you wait.
As abruptly as it had appeared, it withdrew, the wooden lips melting back into the surface of the door. It must have signaled to Achillea that the time for despair and self-doubt was over.
We need to come up with some kind of plan,
she said. The longer the show continues to air, Tale of the Manticore firsts get fewer and farther between. But I think this is one. The entire party has been defeated and imprisoned. They've been locked in a cell and manacled to boot. But because their captors were automatons, the PCs still have almost all of their gear. Immediately 2 items come to mind that might help them out of this situation. Achillea's potion of gaseous form and her spellbook. Actually, let's take a beat and talk about spells for a minute. Achillea had her spell of Detect Evil active during the encounter with the animated armor, so she knew that they were not created by means of an evil enchantment. The spell description about exactly what constitutes objects under evil enchantment is, I think, deliberately vague. About a third of the skimpy spell description is a note to the DM saying they'll need to make a ruling. Since this is a 2nd level spell, for it to have any utility, I have to give it enough latitude to say that Achillea knows, with certainty, that the animated suits of armor were not made with dark magic. That knowledge was a key factor in her decision to surrender, actually. By extension, Achillea's perception of Xygog as a potential enemy, something she knows has never been more than an assumption, is now challenged. That said, I really stopped the narrative to try to figure out some kind of plan of action for the PCs. Here are the key components of the situation as I see it. 1. The party members are all manacled and locked in a room. For argument's sake, I'll say they've tried the door and confirmed that it is indeed locked. 2. Some of them are badly wounded. 3. They can assume they'll be left alone for a while, since the magic mouth told them to consider their folly while they wait, so hours are likely to pass before anything further happens to the PCs. 4. Achillea has a potion of gaseous form, and will soon have access to a new enchantment, or rather disenchantment, when she acquires Dispel Magic after resting and studying. 5. Flicker has the ability to blink, possibly through a door? Probably. Would that even be helpful? I'm not quite sure. 6. The PCs still have access to mundane items, like rope, thread, oil, etc. I think I need to step away from the game and have a good, long think. See you later. Okay, I'm back, and I have had a chance to let the marbles roll around in the attic for a while. My first thought concerned Achillea's potion of gaseous form. If she used it, she could escape her manacles, and even the prison cell, with no problem. It's not a magical door with a hermetical seal or anything. So let's say, hypothetically, she does that. Then what? She floats around like a cloud, hoping to find a key? That's not likely to happen. Eventually, she'd recorporealize as a naked half-elf, running about in a highly dangerous and well-guarded wizard's home, without access even to her own spellbook. So that choice is clearly not a wise choice. A much better option is to wait, with the intention of learning spells that could help in their situation, like Shrink. Hey, it worked for Drenny when Achillea met him. It could work again. And Achillea is not the only one to get a new and potentially useful spell. Fairwind, since his level up in episode 40, now has access to 2nd level spells. I think he'll choose Hold Person as the most likely to be useful in an escape attempt. With this course of action pretty much decided, I redirected my train of thought and started thinking about the seclusium itself. I know certain things about this place that the characters don't, and I've kept them close to my chest in general. I mention that not as an annoying tease, but to say it does and will greatly affect how things play out. But I'm getting sidetracked. Here's what's most important right now. The party's stay in the cell will not last forever. They've been told to wait. Wait for what? We'll see soon enough, but the point is that the PCs do not have unlimited time to prepare. How much do they need, and how much will they have? Well, they need about 12 hours to rest and memorize new spells. Knowing what I do about what's happening outside their cell, I can say that they won't be interrupted in the middle of the night. But let's make things interesting and add an element of randomness here. I'll say there's a 1 in 6 chance that they will be interrupted first thing in the morning, before they can memorize their spells. I'll just grab a d6. Okay, we're looking for anything except a 1 on the die. Here's the roll. Very good. I got a 5. Chapter 43, Part 2, Day 37, Sometime in the morning. Mythic event meaning, Abuse magic. Party status, Achillea, 8 out of 15 hit points, having gained 1 point through natural healing. Cord, 3 out of 24, having gained 1 point through natural healing. Dureni, 11 of 19, having gained 1 point through natural healing. Tentir, 19 of 19. Fairwind, 19 of 33, having gained 1 point through natural healing. Flicker, 16 of 16. Supplies. The companions have been without food for 1 day. After today, they will not be able to heal naturally until they have eaten. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink, Message, Detect Evil, Glitter Dust, and Dispel Magic. Cord can cast Entangle, Locate Plants and Animals, Slow Poison, Create Water, Hold Animal, and Speak with Plants. Fairwind can cast Cure Light Wounds ×2 and Hold Person. While it had been impossible to track the passage of time inside their presumably underground cell, the companions eventually grew tired. For most of them, their worry and their wounds made sleep come with difficulty. If they hadn't had their bedrolls, perhaps Achillea and Dureni might never have passed out. Poor Cord, who never slept, had to stay awake all night, feeling his injuries in whatever way plants feel pain. At least he had Robin to keep him company. Some hours later, as morning arrived in the outside world, the companions woke up, groaning and stiff, their hurts complaining, and with the graveness of their situation hurtling into focus. But Achillea found her resolve, and, despite being manacled, managed to fumble open her book of spells and begin to study, hoping to learn those enchantments that might prove most useful in an escape attempt. While she was poring over the arcane text, part of her mind began to ponder the nature of the beings that had captured them. She realized that she had some understanding of how the animated suits of armor worked, and although she lacked the skill to make anything like that, she might just have enough to unravel it. She turned to the pages at the back of the book and found what she was looking for. Yes, there it was. A spell that had never made any sense before. Now she understood it, and the knowledge could not have come at a better time. She bent to the task of memorization. Beside her, Fairwind was tending to Cord's wounds. He put his bound hands on the construct's torso and, eyes closed, allowed his energies to flow out. While Achillea is learning Dispel Magic, Fairwind will create some magic of his own. He will use both of his Cure Light Wounds prayers to bring Cord back to, I hope, reasonable health. Each spell does 1d6 plus 1 points of healing, so I'll roll 2d6 plus 2. Here we go. That's not great. I have a 5 on the dice for a total of 7 points. Cord is restored to 10 points, and while that's not a lot, at least now a light breeze won't send him to meet his maker. When Achillea closed her book of spells and looked up, she saw Dureni and Tentir sitting with their backs to the wall, side by side, conversing in low voices. Flicker was snoozing by her side. She jerked a little at the sound of Achillea's book closing, and then immediately returned to her nap. Cord and Fairwind were standing by the shelf that held the remaining manacles. The construct, she realized, was looking somewhat better. Understanding what Fairwind had done, she thanked the cleric for his ministrations.
"Don't thank me. The gift of healing comes from Sadal's divine grace,"
Fairwind replied. Achillea looked over Cord's renewed body and saw how his wounds had closed to some degree. Then she looked at her own stitched-up cuts. Even they were beginning to scab and heal, albeit slowly. She touched one gingerly and winced. Then, glancing back at Cord once again, noticed something. Some of the wood, sprouts, and moss that had been hacked off him were destroyed, had grown back, but in different places. She pointed it out to Fairwind, who smiled knowingly and chuckled to himself.
"Proof of the immortal soul."
"Come again?"
said Achillea.
"Oh, I said it's proof of the soul."
"Does the soul's existence need proving?"
Achillea was a bit confused.
"Cord and Robin are proof enough. They wouldn't exist if Altplay hadn't..."
No, not to us,"
Fairwind cut in.
"But without Cord or Robin at my side, I might struggle to explain the existence of an immortal soul to a Camranthian farmhand, or a soldier, or someone's dying old grandmother. You know, before I came out east, I traveled in the west, teaching the word of Sadal."
Achillea did know that, but she was unclear nonetheless.
"But how could Cord's wounds prove the existence of a soul?"
she asked. The construct leaned in, listening to the conversation intently. He had an existential interest in the matter, after all.
There's a story I would tell sometimes. Let's see. How does it begin?
The Parable of the Clergy House.
In the western reaches of Camranth, where the land meets the sea, there once was a fishing village with an old church made of stone and wood. Beside this church was a second, smaller building called the Clergy House. It had a roof of drooping thatch. There was a little garden in the back where the priests grew tomatoes and green beans for their supper. Time wore on the house as it does on all things. A roof beam rotted and the villagers replaced it. The plaster walls cracked. They were mended. Over the years, one by one, the bricks, the timbers, even the doors themselves were replaced. Eventually, it was said that not a single original stone or beam remained, yet the villagers still called it the Clergy House, the same as they always had. One day, an innocent child asked one of the clergymen if it was really true that all of the parts of the church had been replaced at one time or another, to which the priest replied that indeed it was. Then the child asked a second question. If none of its parts were original, was this building truly the clergy house, or was it someplace new? This question might have made an unwise man laugh, dismissing the question as silly, even foolish. But this priest had the wisdom to understand its true importance, and the child never forgot the answer they received. All things and all beings have a divine form, began the priest, and their existence is not essentially in the material world. Forms are eternal. They exist before and after the life of the person, the tree, the wagon, or the building has come and gone. You and I are no different. We were here before we were born, and we will remain after we die. Our time on Marith is a blink in the grand scheme of things. This thing I refer to is Sadal's greatest gift, yet most men are not even aware of it. Only the wise can perceive the immortal soul.
Are you two also working on a plan?
Asked Dureni from where he and Tentir were sitting.
We have had a few ideas. None of them are very good, though.
Achillea bit her lip. Without really answering the question, she replied,
I think I can break these manacles open.
How would you manage that?
Achillea considered trying to explain the epiphany that led to her understanding of the new spell, but before she could begin her answer, the magic mouth reappeared on the door of their cell. Everyone looked up as it spoke.
Intruders, the great and powerful wizard Xygog has decided to speak with you. Prepare to explain your presence in his home. Attempts at trickery will be unsuccessful. Attempts to resist will be dealt with severely.
Achillea's mind raced. Her shrink spell could free one of them, but what good would that really do? She didn't even have time to think that course of action through before the familiar clanking sound of the animated suits of armor could be heard. Another option was to use her disenchantment spell on all their manacles. A third was to cast it on the suits of armor themselves. The clanking sound was louder now. The captors would be there any moment.
What do we do?
Asked Tentir, looking around nervously.
Courage, little mouse.
Soothed Dureni.
Courage.
Achillea really did not know what the wisest course of action would be, and at the same time knew that hesitation would cost her in options. Flicker now backed up and lowered herself, as though about to spring, facing the door. A low growl spilled out of her throat. Then the door opened, and there, looking just as they had before, were the three remaining headless suits of animated armor. They were still battered and beaten. The one missing an arm still held its halberd one-handed. Something about this struck Achillea as odd. If Xygog was such a great wizard, why had he not repaired his sentries, or sent different ones? These looked like they could barely stand upright. She put a hand on Flicker's back when she noticed the blink dog was preparing to lunge.
No, Flicker,
She said, and the dog relaxed. Dented and shaky or not, the animated armor held weapons, while she and her companions were almost defenseless. Even if she could free them from their manacles, they would be outmatched. And what if they did somehow defeat the sentries? What then? They could not presume that the rest of the wizard's home was undefended, and she was unwilling to leave without speaking to him. For these reasons, when the armor gestured for them to leave the cell and re-enter the corridor, she complied. Her friends followed her lead, and soon the whole company was moving down the corridor, away from the direction they had come, and deeper into the complex. They moved at a brisk pace, as lagging resulted in the firm poke of a halberd tip, and it didn't take many of those before the companions learned to keep up the pace. The corridor turned east and then went straight for a long way before turning once again to the north. In the space between the bends in the hallway were a number of archways and doors. The doors were all closed, but some of them had odd sounds coming from behind them. Others had weird smells seeping through. The archways all opened into libraries and studies of different sizes. Even the smallest of these contained dozens of volumes, and by the time they reached the turn north, Achillea guessed that they must have passed by at least 500 or 600 books.
A historian indeed.
She thought. The rooms must have included the archived collection of Odok's life's work. It was an astonishing notion that so many thoughts and ideas could exist together in, essentially, one place. The companions were herded around the corner and now faced north. The corridor ahead of them stretched for about 60 feet and terminated at an open archway with scrollwork decorations worked into the stone along its top. The only other feature in the hall was a pair of ensconced torches set opposite each other on the wall midway along. These were not the only sources of light, however, nor the strongest. A bright yellow-orange glow emitted from beyond the arch, so bright that whatever was producing it was impossible to see. This did not change as the party passed the torches and drew closer to the arch, but now they could feel heat coming from the room and hear a dull, low roaring sound like that of a bonfire. Even though a meeting with Xygog was all Achillea had wanted for weeks, she was now beginning to feel a mounting sense of dread. When she hesitated, she got the tip of a halberd between her shoulder blades.
Ouch!
She cried and lurched forward. It looked like she was going to have this meeting whether she wanted it anymore or not. Her heartbeat throbbed in her throat. This was it, and the responsibility to not fail was like carrying a mountain on her shoulders as she approached and then passed under the scrolled archway. Achillea could never have anticipated what was waiting for her and her companions beyond. Even before they saw it, they felt it. A wave of intense heat that pulsed out from the back of the room. The source of the brightness that had been obscured by its own light was now visible. Above a wide two-step dais, an enormous ball of fire hovered. It was bigger than the biggest bonfire any of them had ever seen. It must have been 6 feet across, perfectly round, with a surface of roiling flames, like a miniature sun. Now Achillea's heart banged in her chest like a smith's hammer. She faltered, but caught herself and kept advancing before the halberd tip could prod her again. The companions were marched into the room, a white marble square of 40 feet per side. Floor, walls, ceiling, and dais were all made of the same polished stone that caught and reflected the orange of the floating ball of fire. The room had no other exits or features. With a clanking sound, the animated armor now arranged themselves so that one flanked the companions on either side, while the third remained behind them. Raised halberds made sure that they were all corralled tightly together.
By Sadal's grace,
breathed Fairwind as he pressed against Tentir's side. The elven brother echoed his sentiment.
Thursendia, save us.
In the face of the heat and the fire, Achillea had to squint and smile, though she felt no joy. She had a promise to fulfill, and she was determined to do right.
My name is Achillea Muag, apprentice to Aldvain Muag.
She practically shouted at the blazing sphere. There was a moment where fate seemed to stretch out, hanging in the room while the blistering heat beat at her. Then a face became discernible in the self-consuming, self-regenerating fireball. It had 2 black pockets of eyes and a gaping crescent slit for a mouth. The members of Achillea's party trembled anew. Fairwind's frantic mind madly recalled a carved pumpkin lantern seen once in Camranth during the Festival of Autumn. The fireball spoke with the voice of an inferno. It fight began, and Achillea could not stop herself from shaking. Somehow, the great ball of flame produced no smoke. Neither did it consume any fuel. All the same, a new wave of heat pushed out of it when it spoke again. Thank you for listening to Tale of the Manticore. If you'd like to help support the show, there are a bunch of ways to do so. You can recommend it online and to friends. You can like and repost episode announcements on social media. You can purchase a Tale of the Manticore t-shirt at beararts.store or one of my offerings on DriveThruRPG. And finally, you can rate and review the show on your favorite podcatcher. All these things help, and I appreciate it. At this point, I'd love to share a listener review. This one was left on Apple Podcasts by Sir Helius. Sir Helius writes, "Mind blown. This podcast managed to scratch an itch that almost no other D&D media could. It takes itself and the adventures seriously, a refreshing antithesis to the silliness that took over the game and the way many people play it. I'm happy this art piece exists, and I'm looking forward to listening to it in its entirety." Thanks very much, Sir Helius. You know, I'm always surprised by how few quote-unquote serious D&D shows there are. The comedy-style shows simply dominate the field, and I still don't know why, though I am a little less bothered by it than I used to be, which is probably good for my blood pressure. Anyway, I'm very grateful that you and other folks that listen in here exist and have the same tastes as I do. Thanks a million for that review. And I have more thanks to give. Let's talk about this episode's cast of voice actors. We're back to the usual core trio of Kevin Berenger, Kai Allen, and Dave Cooper, playing Tentir, Durrani, and Fairwind. Thanks very much, guys. And yet again, playing the voice of the Magic Mouth is Amanda T. Thank you, Amanda. Check out her work at wicked_loving_lies on Instagram. Trust me, it's really good stuff. For those curious to learn more about Tale of the Manticore, I keep a blog where I post all kinds of show and RPG-related stuff, like sketches, maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.com. To get in touch with me, I'm at soloroleplayersnetwork.com, taleofthemanticore.bluesky.social, Tale of the Manticore podcast on Instagram, or taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. I read and respond to every email I receive. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore. It's the story where chaos rolls.